he talked about how he wanted to change the way people think so that he could then change their behavior. And then later in it, he said, wait, you have to change their environment to change their behavior. So he starts going through this whole, and I'm thinking of our equation of...
That is 100% the kinetic equation.
Yeah. And so he was working through that as a child. I think he was 6 or 7 when he was talking about this.
I was 39. But...
I know.
Becoming Da Vinci.
The Becoming Da Vinci show is sponsored by the Kinetic Experience, where entrepreneurs go to have even more success and more fun in their business and life.
Becoming Da Vinci.
So to learn more about the Becoming Da Vinci show, visit us at www.becomingdavinchishow.com, where you can learn all sorts of stuff about Leonardo da Vinci and what we are doing to correlate his life and his example with modern day entrepreneurs and self-directed learning.
Becoming Da Vinci.
Hi, welcome to the Becoming Da Vinci show. We're going to talk today about Jacque Fresco. Yes, Jacque Fresco.
This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, very much so. He's an interesting dude. So our goal with this episode is to highlight what a free thinker he is. He really thought, and I don't even know what the right words are, but dove into all the things that he felt were wrong with our society and our country, from starting with not pledging allegiance to the flag to really pushing on changing our environment and our system of money, like capitalism and democracy and like a whole bunch of stuff. Like he pushed back on everything. He was an innovator, an engineer, a scientist, a creator, curious, like beyond belief, self-directed learner for sure, inventor, like you name it, he was it. So at the Kinetic Experience, we are redefining success to include our heart and our love and our compassion and our caring for one another. We believe that success is when our life choices align with our heart and caring becomes a defining aspect of who we are. That said, what are you thinking, Abe, when you hear that and how it relates to Jacque?
Yeah, I was actually really excited about this particular episode of this particular individual because he embodies so many different of the Da Vinci traits. It's phenomenal. Plus, he's such a personality.
Right.
In and of itself. So I think you were just saying right before we started rolling the camera is that he had something like 18 different titles that he referred to himself as. Mm-hmm. And he just, has this way about himself and on the videos that you can see all over YouTube. And it's just an actually really interesting individual. So I'm really excited.
Full of confidence.
So what do you think?
So much confidence. He's definitely a cocky dude. He loves his mental intellect. But the videos that I watched and what I've read about him, fascinating man. He has studied so many different aspects of our world, from biology to physics to nutrition to everything, like how to best use the solar system, and everything. So I find him fascinating. I would like to see if there was compassion and love and all of that tied into him.
Well, we're gonna get into that a little bit later.
Yeah. So we'll see. So one of our favorite quotes from Leonardo, from the Walter Isaacson book. Walter Isaacson, I said it right this time, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, Leonardo da Vinci. One of the favorite quotes is, "The 15th century of Leonardo and Columbus and Gutenberg was a time of invention, exploration, and the spread of knowledge by new technologies. In short, it was a time like our own. That is why we have much to learn from Leonardo. His ability to combine art, science, technology, the humanities, and imagination remains an enduring recipe for creativity. So too is his ease at being a bit of a misfit. Illegitimate, gay, vegetarian, left-handed, easily distracted, and at times heretical." Okay, so this guy, Jacque, such a misfit, such a rebel, and owned it. He loved not fitting in.
So let's talk about Mr. Fresco. So he was born March 13, 1916, and passed away May 18, 2017. And he was actually born and raised in the United States. And so for you guys doing the math, he was 101 years old when he passed away. And he's really, really best known for the Venus Project, which is this really unique concept for creating a city that's 100% sustainable, self-sustainable. Mm-hmm. So the water, electricity, gas, everything for the city, all the resources, all the power were all contained inside of the city. And what they were doing, what his concept was, is using technology, basically robots and so forth, to run the city and free up human time to do the things that the humans wanted to do, not that they had to run the city. And instead was using resources that are available from the earth as a way to power the city, not as something that you inherently go get the resources to sell to other people, right? So I think it was phenomenal. And so there's some really amazing YouTube videos that we found and articles on this individual. He had a really huge impact and was really well known, especially because of this one project. And he was, here's some awesome quotes from himself. He believed in a resource-based economy and actually went to trademark that term, which I thought was interesting. But the trademark office felt like it was too generic, so they wouldn't give him the trademark. So he was a self-educated industrial designer, engineer, and futurist, and who believed that ultimately what we could do to change the society or cure the society of whatever the ills were directly related to us throwing away the rules that we currently had. It's kind of basically starting over. And that's as much of a misfit as you can imagine, right? And so I love these quotes from him. You can't be a human or a decent human anyways without the knowledge to overcome scarcity. And that's really kind of interesting and really deep and gave me something to really think about. And the other one is, if you think we can change the world, it just means that you're not one of those that will.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That one I love. The other one about scarcity, I'm still like rolling around in my head going, I don't know about that. But definitely, if you think we can't,
then you're not the ones who are going to do it.
You're not at all to be part of it, right? It goes along with that whole dissonance versus resonance with an idea.
True.
So just walk away if you don't think we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And those that resonate with this concept of changing the world or whatever that may be, they're the individuals that are actually going to work toward it. And if we're like, no, we'll never cure,
whatever.
Water pollution or starvation or whatever, you're not going to be part of that solution, period. Other people are working on it and they're going to solve the problem.
Right.
So self-directed learning, what do you think?
My favorite. Oh my gosh. I wish I had hours and hours more to keep studying him about self-directed learning, because he was a very young kid, not even, I think he said 5, where he exhibited his first like verbal communication about being self-directed. And basically he stated like, there's no need for teachers or like, why bother? He's like, let the person pursue what they're interested in and they will learn and learn and learn and dive deep. And I'm just like, yes. But so you're going to watch a little video clip of an interview about him where he talks about when he was in school and this amazing opportunity he had at the school. And this was 1916. So it was probably like 1920 to 25, sometime in that time frame, way long ago. And this principal just does the most amazing thing for him to encourage self-directed learning and fits him perfectly. And I love when you see people in education who notice a child who needs something different and just bucks the system and lets it happen. And so I think that was a really defining thing for Jacque. And it helped him develop into who he was and to really then go on to his other things that he did with his education. I mean, it was always self-directed. He was not in school after the age of 13, I think it was, something like that, 12, 13. He hated it. He, again, was just like, I can learn anything that needs to be learned. And he talked all the time. If someone said they didn't know how to do something, he's like, well, go to the library. Like, that was his answer. Go to the library. Like, in big meetings and people would complain about, a big problem. Well, let's go to the library. Like, his whole answer to everything was just learn and figure it out. Like, we can figure it out. And so he did. And one of the things was he learned from experiences. All of it was. And this one was that is highlighted is that at the age of 13, a relative hurt their hand on a metal fan. Mm-hmm. And so he created and invented a fan that was soft, I guess. It's a
made from fabrics.
Fabric, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and later it became marketed, and that was his first real product that came out when he was, young. So, and there's going to be video links to these that you guys can watch and get more details on. But he basically taught himself throughout his entire life, and he really encouraged that. And spoke at almost every interview I've seen of him. He talks about how he felt our education system was letting people down, letting kids down. And that he just really felt that if you wanted to learn, it's your choice, just go learn, which is so simple.
I think what the reality is that people are always learning anyways.
Yeah.
Like if kids are learning extremely complicated games at home by themselves, and then they learn how to do things on whatever sports that they're interested in or cars that they're interested in.
Yeah.
And really, it's 100% because they want to, and that's already happening.
Yeah.
And adults are like that too, right? And obviously, everything that we've done here at the Kinetic Experience is something that we either knew from a previous experience or we came here like, I don't know how to do this. Let's try to start figuring this out.
Figure it out. Yeah.
And for those that have been watching this show, you will see like there's different angles on cameras and there's different setups that we constantly try because we're learning. And we're not nobody's coming in and telling us that we have to do it. We're like, what will provide a better experience? So I think it's just a wonderful example of, or a correlation between how we're learning as adults, and every adult does this. And if you really ponder it, you'll go back and remember as a kid, you learned how to do all of these things by yourself. And that's really what this individual was pushing for, and something that we talk about here very often. So here's the funny part is that I get to do the Misfit Rebel one instead of you.
How'd that work out?
I know, right? So we have always this question that we ask is, to the person that we're interviewing, have you ever identified yourself as a misfit or a rebel? And yes or no. And the answer here is obviously yes.
1,000%.
1,000%. And then the next question is like, well, why, or what was the reason that caused you? And I think in his reason, it was birth. I think he was born to rebel against everything and be a misfit. So there's really funny stories here around this. So he questioned church speakers, he questioned the police, he questioned school teachers, he constantly questioned everybody. And basically he wasn't really accepted into social groups.
No, and to add to that, so one of the videos, he talks about how he was young still. This is when I don't know, in my mind I'm thinking he's in his early teens, but it could be a little bit later. But he was bored and he had already confronted as many people as he could to learn about them or push their belief systems or whatever. And so he's like, okay, where's a community that I can really get some resistance to and push their boundaries? And so there was an Arab community right near him. So he had someone tell him about who to talk to there, and he says the name, and I can't pronounce the name. But he starts in the video, Jacque starts speaking with an Arab accent, and he starts talking about how he can pass as Arab because of the way he looked and whatever. And so he called the guy, the leader of this community, and they believed that the earth was flat. So his whole mission was to go in there and show them that the earth was round. So, and this is a very tight community, right? They don't let outsiders in and whatever. So he calls them and he says, I'm Arabic, and I want to come and talk to you. I've heard a lot of great things. So he goes and meets the guy, and then spends this whole time to figure out the why of why this man believes that the earth is flat, so that he could then come up with a whole argument and presentation, everything to prove to him that the earth is round. So he does, and comes back with this whole example and takes a balloon and blows it up, and then he gets it all staticky, and then has the guy put cornflakes in his hand. And the guy was saying, well, if this was the earth and someone walked on it, they'd fall off, or the water would fall off and whatever. And there's, how are they going to stay? And how would the people on the bottom be there? They would all be upside down and whatever. So Jacque had him put the cornflakes, and he put it up, and, all the cornflakes stuck to the balloon, and so the guy was like, oh, what the heck is this? And so then the whole community started adopting that the earth was round. And so he talks about how he would do that, where he would go and push the beliefs of whatever he could find that was stuck on a certain belief. And he's like, I've got to prove that there are other ways to think. There's other things.
100%. So much so that mothers were not letting their kids play with them because he was so much of a misfit and a rebel.
Yeah.
He refused to do the Pledge of Allegiance in school because he thought that the United States did a lot of bad things to other nations and to the earth, and because of pollution. So he decided that he was just going to pledge allegiance to the earth and not to the United States. And
the earth and the people within it, because the people within it did such great things for the earth. and it wasn't just one country.
Right. It's not just one country. Yeah. So here's really funny. He moved to Florida, to Miami in 1955, and he opened a business as a psychological consultant. But he had no formal schooling and training. And then he received a broad criticism all the way from the American Psychological Association. So he finally closed the business. But I am for sure that he opened that business going like, I know this subject. I have researched this subject. I know what is wrong with these people. I can help them. I'm going to create this business. So I thought that was just awesome. And that's actually a little bit later on in his life. Obviously, there's a lot of cool things that he did before then in his 20s and 30s that we'll talk about shortly. Now, this was really, really crazy is that he also joined to give you an idea of like how much he wanted to not only be a misfit and a rebel, but to go implant himself in situations where he could misfit and be a rebel. He actually joined white supremacist organizations, the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Council, just to test the feasibility of changing people's views about racial discrimination. I thought that was pretty awesome.
I know. He's fascinating. That's what I was saying. I have like, I can't even count here, probably a dozen tabs on my browsers of all articles and stuff I want to watch about him. And I just haven't had the time.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, he's fascinating. Like, talk about, like, so the next subject is curiosity. And then what I was thinking about when I was reading this, I'm like, he questioned everything like Leonardo did. Why is that leaf that shape? Why is that leaf that color? Why is the sky this color? Why is that person blah, 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 you know, like everything. And then he took it, I think, even further than Leonardo in the sense that he really looked for the actual problem and then communicated it out. I don't know that Leonardo even cared about other people understanding his methods. It was for him, it was an internal thing of, I need to figure this out. Whereas Jacque really wanted to change the world's thinking and behaviors. That
is a really great point, and I never thought of it the same way for Leonardo, because Leonardo changed the world.
Right.
But as a byproduct of his efforts. I don't think, like Jacque's actual goal was changing the world.
Yes.
And he, like you said, he communicated that out. He actually received a prize at the United Nations. I mean, he was well known in the world for pushing these concepts and developing these theories. So it's really interesting, and you're absolutely right. His curiosity extended beyond. Yeah, I like that.
It is crazy. So we have a bunch of articles about the things that he was curious about. I mean, it's everything, like everything you can imagine.
Well, yeah, because the Venus Project is around creation of a city, which would not just be a city in Earth by itself. It's really showing that this city is the way all cities should be converted to, right? And this would be the city of the future. And so if you think about it like that, yes, he had to be interested in everything. So I know he researched, human motivation, because some of the discussions around people and working and why you can't just have people existing there without them training money or getting the resource out of the earth. He had theories about him, and he researched things. And so a lot of his stuff is not just ideas. There were actually researched like full-blown research projects, along with researching or interacting and collaborating with people around the world that were also researching these topics.
Yeah. So he studied, I think of all the components that would have gone into, at the age of 13, that go into building that fan. Like, that's the question started from a pain point. Oh, my relative is hurt. How do I solve that? How do we change that? Why is it still a thing that someone can get hurt from a fan? Like all of these questions. And then to hear his answer, which you'll hear in that video clip earlier, his answer about why he wouldn't pledge allegiance, all of the thought that went into that. So the questions he would have had to have asked to even get to that point. I think of his parents. I mean, normal kids ask a lot of questions and why? He probably was the most exhausting child on the planet, like thinking about everything. Not
only why, but we could actually do this instead, and let me show you how, and why are you still doing it the old way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty. And I would imagine not keeping his opinions to himself.
No. I don't think that's even, no.
No, I don't think so.
I think his whole purpose in life was to share his knowledge and opinions. One of the things he said, and I was trying to find it and I should have bookmarked it, but he was talking about how he was compared to Da Vinci.
Oh, yes.
He says, It was something about curiosity. I'll have to find it and we'll talk about it later.
So you find that one and I want to talk about innovation.
Okay.
So of course we have this question, how were they or how are you innovative in your life? And oh my gosh. So again, I think totally pegs this one. Yeah. So his creativity is just so profound in how he applies it in being innovative. So you talk about the fan idea. So one idea for the fan would have been just to create the housing of the fan in a way that it was harder to put your that through it, right? That would be the most simple way to do it. But he looked at it differently and thought, what if I change the blades themselves? And like you said, he went through all of this to figure out how do you create a fan blade that's made from fabric that is rigid enough to move air, but if you go to touch it, it doesn't actually hurt yourself and cut your fingers. So for those that have never seen a really old fan, if you go find really old photos of fans in the 1920s, and that's what you're looking for, because he was 13 years old when he actually produced the fan. So you're talking about fans that in that time frame in the 1920s, you know, a lot of times they're just really basically open, and so it's really easy to touch the blades. So another thing is that back in the later part of the 1930s, he worked at Douglas Aircraft Company, and he created designs of flying wings, which were it's really interesting because if you think of the B-1 bomber, the B-1 stealth bomber, that became a flying wing, and then the Nazis had worked on that effort too in the 1940s ultimately, probably in the 30s, but ultimately flying it I think in the 40s if I'm not mistaken. I'm not really 100% sure there. But what's interesting is that they thought his designs were impractical. And so ultimately he resigned from Douglas because of design disagreements. So if you are an engineer and you're functioning in this role and you actually decide that you're going to quit working at the company because of design disagreements, you can imagine what that was like working with him at the time, because he was coming up with all these crazy ideas, coming in, I'm sure showing the team, showing the boss, flying wing, flying disc, which would be like we would call a UFO kind of flight thing. And imagine the disagreements. And they were like, that does not look like an airplane with it's totally different. And I can imagine. So this was really awesome. So then he goes from Douglas Aircraft to working on something called the Trend House. And so the Trend House was this idea of creating essentially a packaged house using aluminum and glass and concrete. So they were very, very sustainable materials. They could be shipped on location. It was really fast to build. This would have been, I guess, if he ever had a job that if it would have taken off, it would have been kind of normal. It would have been this one. But there was an investment of like $500,000, which is a substantial amount of money when this Trend House effort was going on. And it didn't take off because they started to realize that there would be federal regulations and then state regulations and whatever the bureaucracy of it would be, that it would raise the price of the house. And now it's no longer an idea that would be attractive. And so I think really this became the point where he says, F all of this. This is dumb. I'm going to now do the Venus Project. So I think that's really, if you think about how he progressed through these ideas. So you're talking about fan, you're talking about totally different designs for aircrafts. Finally, like, okay, this is the kind of house that we need to build in the future. They're cheap, they're modular, they work, blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately like, okay, F all of this. I want to just tear down all of these dumb rules that are holding me back and holding us back. And let's create this new city in the middle, and completely change the way we're looking at resources and everything. And I think it's phenomenal because even right now, for those individuals that come out with really unique, innovative ideas, I think what happens is that they represent the future, but the current paradigm defends itself. Yeah. And the current paradigm will push back against any kind of innovation, even things that would appear unrelated. So for example, completely different topic is that there has been conversation in the past about putting casinos in Dallas. Really? But yes, and it gets lobbied against really heavily. But the money for lobbying comes from Oklahoma, right? Because in Oklahoma, there's the big gambling casinos, WinStar or whatever, that are right there on the border, and they want the Texas customers to go up. And so they don't want us to put a casino in Dallas. And so while casino in Dallas may be good, maybe not, whatever, the influences come from the current paradigm or the current reality. Same thing with the things like here. There's whole, obviously, massive industries that are built around the idea that the resources that are in Earth belong to an individual that can sell it to the rest of people. And he's saying, no, those resources are all of our resources. And we have to treat it like that. And it's not for one person to get the resources to be rich. It's for all of us to be able to get the resources. So I didn't dig deep enough to understand some of the nuance associated with this around, well, would people just be lazy or abuse the system? That's really not the point of this particular episode, but it's just so interesting on how he explored all of these things and was so innovative around his ideas.
He was. The thing I found this one piece where he was talking about innovation and thinking towards the future and how to change the world and such. And I thought this was interesting. The foresight to me is based on the hopes, desires, and aims of individuals. But without a practical blueprint, it is no more than science fiction. And I think that's where he came in and he created those. He says a constructive vision requires a methodology for achieving the desired goal of a sustainable future. The blueprint must also include plans for education, healthcare, housing, city planning, transportation, clean sources of energy, etc.
So he wasn't just theoretical.
No, he dove in.
Yeah, he dove in to actually create the problem, the solutions to the problem. Very, very engineering trait there. It's like, okay, I will not only, research information, but I'll actually solve a problem with the information I find. So do you think he had imagination?
Oh, yeah, I would say so. For sure.
What do you think his imagination was like as a kid?
Oh my God. Can you imagine to be have a VR of his brain, of the way he thought about things? I would think that it would be very visual, that he would actually see things almost in real life as he imagined them. Not conceptual, but they were alive. And I think someone with that type of brain and the passion that he has and his purpose, he had to have really felt deep within him, or saw everything at a very deep, real level, to be able to put the time and energy and passion and everything into it, to then go out and sell it and communicate it the way he did, and stand there and just own it up to people who are, better qualified, let's say, or in authority over him or whatever. He really just stood for what he thought and saw and dreamed of. And so I think that when he imagined something, he could probably taste it and feel it and smell it and the whole bit.
So for those that, it's kind of like the Colby test, right? So I know one of the numbers, one of the assessment numbers, is related to, can you visualize the solution, or do you have to work manually to create the solution and then see it? Right. And I am 100% sure that he could visualize his solution in his mind, and then communicated it out or built it out.
And not only the solution, he could probably visualize it, the solution, and then all of the ripple effect of it. Just the way that he talks and the way that he's what he's created.
Super.
Yeah.
I totally 100% agree. So as I describe Leonardo's traits of being innovative, wildly imaginative, passionately curious, creative across multiple disciplines, experimental, observative, strong-willed, and highly ambitious, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Jacque, Mr. Fresco, does that come to mind? Does he come to mind?
Sure. I think he would hit every single one of those. And times 10. Thinking through who he was. The man was amazing. And I wonder what he would be like if he had the internet.
When he was 20?
Yeah.
Or 15?
Yeah, what he could have done to learn. So I found the thing about how he compares himself to Leonardo. This is one of them. It's not the full thing, but he says, I don't think about this comparison at all. I'm not pressured to meet any expectation except that which is available to me. The confidence of that.
And that's really great, because ultimately comparing yourself to others is not something you want to do. We know that.
No.
If you don't know that, I would say that's something we've learned in our lives. It's not something you want to do. But I tell you what's interesting is that when we approach individuals and talk about the show, or want them to be on the show, when we say what the show's about and what we call being a modern day version of a Da Vinci, the way we say that, it really takes people Some
they feel
people
honored.
They kind of like, what? I can't do that.
Yeah, but he's like, whatever. I'm me. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Why would you compare me to him?
Leonardo. Who's he?
Who's he? No, I don't think it was like that.
So one of the things he said, and and I found a piece of the quote that I think fits really well right here, is he talked about how he wanted to change the way people think so that he could then change their behavior. And then later in it, he said, wait, you have to change their environment to change their behavior. So he starts going through this whole, and I'm thinking of our equation of...
That is 100% the kinetic equation.
Yeah. And so he was working through that as a child. I think he was 6 or 7 when he was talking about this.
I was 39. But...
I know.
Who's keeping score?
I mean...
Really, it was about 39 when I started to look at all these different pieces that I have learned or we have been taught and started putting together, what we ultimately created, which is this model for behavior, which involves environment, which involves thinking. So he was stumbling upon the same difficulty we had, which is how are these concepts related?
Right. At 6 or 7, I don't remember what age, but he was in elementary school. So tell me about our wealth wheel.
So
this ties into that. So our wealth wheel is it's assessment tool that we use to help us all figure out what makes up our optimal life. So wealth, as defined, is an abundance of resources. So energy, time, money, possessions. And within that, we have 10 main categories that we believe are the resources you need for an optimal life. So what do you think?
So this was fun. So it was almost easier to figure out what weren't the resources. So what I wrote down that I think he exhibited really high and on these 10 topics is support. I think he had an awesome support system, ultimately, of those individuals that came around his vision and supported him. Now, what's interesting is I bet he would have in some ways probably progressed without it because he was such a misfit.
And so strong-willed.
And so strong-willed and so confident. Obviously, wild creativity. I think he had a lot of fun. I know this was serious work to him, but I'm just going to guess that he actually really enjoyed the effort, and not to mention the challenge of learning the new things to design the city of the future.
He loved challenging people and their way of thinking. So he had a ton of fun because he got his kicks off of playing games. I would imagine he had
tons of fun. I think his mental health was phenomenal. I think he was working well into his older age and constantly using his mind and sharing his ideas. So phenomenal. Enrichment, obviously, because in our version, in our topic or our resource of enrichment, we consider learning as part of that, right?
And beliefs.
And his beliefs. So super high there, obviously. Purpose, and intentionality.
Yeah.
So I think his intentionality around the creation of systems is extremely strong because not only was it what he was doing for himself, but again, thinking about the city of the future, it was so methodically planned so that it would have the systems in it to sustain life and to not sustain. Sustain is not really what you would be going for, right? It would be to have the individuals there, the citizens of the city of the future, thrive.
Yeah.
And it was really all around the systems and understanding what would the systems need to be and how they would need to work. I think it's super, super interesting.
Yeah.
And so if you're...
I would say to add to that, at first I didn't think vulnerability, but definitely vulnerability. I was thinking of it more from the exposure side versus the risk side, but he took risks all the time and he was super vulnerable because he just stuck himself out there. He's like, this is me. I'm not going to stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag when I'm in elementary school.
That's a big exposure.
Yeah, and he did that over and over and over again.
Topics. Yeah, and I would say probably when he left Douglas Aircraft, he probably didn't have a job lined up. Not. Just taking a guess.
No.
It's one of those if you're not betting the company on a flying wing or a flying disc, I'm out.
Yeah.
You're fired. And he walked out. I'd probably bet that's how that happened.
Probably.
Who knows?
So the only one I would still question is love. Well, finances we don't know, but it seemed like he.
Yeah, finances I don't think we know, but but on the love side, we define that as your relationship with those core individuals that you have around you, and then your tribe
and yourself.
Of course.
As
That's
one of
part
the
of your core. So I don't know because I didn't research it in that way, but I would say that obviously he had compassion and love in his heart for humanity.
Right.
So again, I'm not sure on that one, but not to say he didn't have it.
And he definitely loved himself.
And that's wonderful. And that all love starts with yourself.
Yeah.
So for those that are interested and you want a copy of the Wealth Wheel, please text us. Please text Kinetic, and that's KINETIC to 38470. So things to do at home. So we always ask our guests, what are the different things that someone can do at home, based on, their expertise or the world that they're in. So we thought about this and we thought about what Fresco would have told us to do at home. And one of the ideas we had was that he really attributed global issues to the monetary system and the craving for income. And so to solve this, he proposed a society that didn't use money. And that's that resource-based society. So our question for you, or our homework assignment, is how would you go about organizing production, law, energy in such a world where the resources of the earth were extracted for the benefit of everybody, not one individual to then sell, or not a few individuals. So that's the homework assignment.
That's a deep one.
Well, it's interesting because I obviously would suggest you researching this whole concept that he has, right? The resource-based financial system and whatnot. And that's a lot of this information is actually available on the Venus Project website. The resource-based economy.
We have a ton of links that we'll share that we can put together with the homework download.
Awesome. So I would love to invite you to text Da Vinci to 38470 for this list of things that you can do at home. And also, again, Kinetic to 38470 related to the Wealth Wheel. You get a link to that effort.
And above all, this is again from Walter Isaacson's book.
It's one of our favorites.
It is absolutely my favorite. Leonardo's relentless curiosity and experimentation should remind us of the importance of instilling in both ourselves and our children not just received knowledge, but a willingness to question it, to be imaginative, and like talented misfits and rebels in any era, to think different. I love that.
I love it. So my name is Abe Nadimi. Thank you so much for tuning in and being with us all the way to the end here. If you have any comments or questions, please drop them in to the comments here in the video. We have these videos hosted on YouTube. We have snippets of them on Instagram. Our Instagram name is Becoming Da Vinci Show. And we also have the audio portions that are available on SoundCloud. Our website address is becomingdavinchishow.com. And you can always reach out to us by email at info@becomingdavinchishow.com. So thank you so much for tuning in. This again is Abe Nadimi.
I'm Jacque Morton, and let us know your comments and thoughts about Jacque and what you think about him compared to Leonardo. We'd love to know.
So we're going to put this out there. If you know anybody that should be covered on this show, please let us know. We're looking for people that are innovative, whether they have a business or not. We're looking for self-directed learners, innovative people who are always learning and trying new things.
Thank you for tuning in to the Becoming Da Vinci Show. Join us next time as we learn more about Leonardo and modern-day entrepreneurs.
Becoming Da Vinci.